Goosebumps. Okay, now let's get going. Let's get you introduced to our two guests tonight. One of them has become the president of Marvel Productions in 2007 and has since produced a couple of small art house movies, such as the Iron Man franchise, Avengers Assemble, Captain America, and he's working hard to extend the Marvel universe even further. The other gentleman is a brilliant director on TV. He has directed episodes of TV series such as Sex and the City, Sopranos, Mad Men, and Game of Thrones. Please welcome Marvel's mastermind and producer of Thor: The Dark Kingdom, Kevin Feige, and its brilliant Emmy Award-winning director, Alan Taylor.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome, Alan and Kevin. Great to have you in Berlin. Alan, let's get started with you. I heard that you got the call to direct Thor: The Dark Kingdom while being on set of Game of Thrones. What did you think about that call?
Yes, we were in Belfast finishing the season of Game of Thrones, and I thought they dialed the wrong number. I mean, that sounds like a joke, but it was so outside of my career path that I thought some horrible mistake had been made. Yeah.
And you didn't make a mistake because he has done a brilliant movie. But why did you call him, Kevin?
It was the right number. We knew we needed a new filmmaker, and I was looking and realizing that television was an unbelievable, was having a renaissance. You know, the shows that you named were all inspirations, and all of those shows had something in common, which was Alan Taylor's name on it, and it was the fact that he had done Game of Thrones that made me think maybe he would be interested. You know, Thor is a very different tonally thing than Game of Thrones, but they share a bit of the same fantasy element and the realistic portrayal of fantasy. And that's why we reached out to Alan, and thankfully he said yes.
Alan, there are a couple of directors who have tackled Marvel superheroes. Did you, prior to starting to direct Thor: The Dark Kingdom, talk to someone like Jon Favreau, Kenneth Branagh, Joss Whedon, or Shane Black?
Yeah, this was so new for me that I tried to talk to everybody I could who'd been through the same process, and Jon Favreau was great. He tried to sort of give me a pep talk. And I spoke to Shane Black, and I spoke to Joss Whedon. I had one moment with Ken Branagh, who I really should talk to since he was the closest to what I'd done, and we were having drinks at a Marvel cocktail party in London, and sort of made a plan to meet again to talk some more away from the drinks and away from Marvel. And we never had a chance because he got dragged into Jack Ryan, his next movie. So I went in with a little conversation with him, but I would have loved to ask him more about, how on earth should I do this? How did you do it?
What did the others tell you? I mean, did they basically prep talk you and say, Alan, do whatever you can do? And was there a certain thing that they basically gave you?
Jon Favreau is a big, sort of menschy, nice guy, and he basically just spent the whole phone call saying, you'll do fine, you'll do fine, you'll do fine, trying to make me relax. Shane Black and others said, hold on tight, it's going to be quite a ride. It's a roller coaster, and trust the process, and get ready for a process that's unlike anything you've ever done before, especially since I come from TV. And they were right. You have to hang on and trust the process.
And it turned out fantastic. I mean, most of you will be able to check that out, but we saw the trailer. Kevin, in comparison to the first part of Thor, what was important for you in creating the Dark Kingdom, and especially the vibe and the look?
Well, this is interesting because it's a sequel to two movies. It's a sequel to the original Thor, and it's a sequel in part to the Avengers. And we wanted to continue, particularly Thor and Loki's story from Avengers. The relationship changed drastically at the end of the first Thor, drastically throughout the course of Avengers, where Loki was the primary villain of the piece. And we knew, of course, we wanted to pick up with where he left Jane Foster, and of course he promised that he would return, and because of Avengers it had been a long time and he hadn't called. So we thought there would be fun potential there. And we also wanted to build upon what Ken Branagh had created in the first film. The world of Asgard was sort of brilliantly conceived in that first film, but it was very shiny, and it was very, we only saw it from a great distance. And one of the things we talked about with Alan early on was seeing more of Asgard, going down to street level. and seeing where the people lived and interacted, and giving it a bit of a more lived-in patina, a little bit of a grittier look, purely so that the reality would land a little bit more.
Kevin, you were just talking about the relationships, something that the fan base has been thinking about. There have been rumors on the internet. How did you, Alan, experience the relationship between Tom, for example, and Chris? And how did they appear to you when you met them for the first time?
I'm trying to think back to when I first met them. I guess I met Chris first, and the most immediate thing about Chris is, he's Australian. He's warm. He hugs people a lot. He calls everybody mate, and you immediately relax with him, I think. Tom is, more elegant and more precise, and but he's just as warm. So I met them separately. Then I finally saw them together, and as soon as you see them together, it's funny, partly because I guess they work together, but there is a chemistry between them that is very direct relation to the brothers. You see Tom's elegant, dexterous mind, and he's agile, and he's always sort of performing a little bit, and Chris is straight ahead, warm, and the two of them talking on the corner of the set, it feels like you're watching the brothers a little bit. And obviously I benefited from the fact that they'd had Ken Branagh's movie and Avengers to sort of get their characters up and running, and they're such great artists, that they're always curious and always looking for new ways to do it and new places to go and stuff. And in our film, we get to take them to some strange new territory. The question looms as to how evil is Loki? Is he capable of something besides evil? And we got to explore that with them this time.
Saying how evil is Loki, did you ever expect Loki to be such a fan favorite? I mean, Chris, as Thor, is the superhero, but everyone seems to like Loki as much.
Is that true? Do you like Loki? We like Loki too, and we believed in Loki, which is why we had built 2 films around him. People forget that we were in production on the first Avengers film with Loki as the primary villain before we even released Thor into theaters. So it was a roll of the dice and a bet based on our sort of belief in the character that the audience would enjoy him. I would say now, through The Dark Kingdom, it has reached a level that even we would not have predicted, thanks to Tom Hiddleston's portrayal of the character. It is, each city we go into, now Berlin, we started in Seoul, South Korea, and there were thousands and thousands of fans waiting for him, wearing Loki costumes, Loki's army. Are there any members of Loki's army here tonight? A few, good.
They're going to be there tomorrow as well.
Excellent.
Okay.
I can only imagine what tomorrow will be like here in Berlin.
The great thing is, for all the Loki fans, we have a wonderful clip showing the relationship between Thor and Loki. Enjoy. Alan, I read this great article, and the journalist basically said that you were responsible for killing Ned Stark on Game of Thrones, you're responsible for killing Julius Caesar on Rome, and responsible for killing off Christopher Moltisanti on The Sopranos. So that's a couple of people that you...
And Wild Billy Hickok in Deadwood.
Okay, see, a couple of more. But was that something that you basically took with you to make Thor, in a sense, a lot darker than the first one?
I tried, and one of the first things Marvel said was that I couldn't kill Thor. But I don't think I'm saying too much to say that there are some beloved characters who I got to take that out on. In our film, that's part of the darkness, is that some people are sacrificed that we care deeply about by this point. I don't know what it is about my personality that it's like I'm the executioner at HBO or something. But it's become, I enjoy it.
But turning back to the movie, because it is a lot darker, but it has a lot of great comedic elements. Was that something that you were aiming for, especially with the sequel, talking about a new villain, Malekith?
Well, I feel like Marvel does it all the time. I mean, that's what and I had to sort of catch up to it personally. I came in thinking dark, 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 dirty, dirty, and then I had to sort of catch up to the fact that had to be balanced by, if anything, even more humor to make sure that those tones were fully there, because I caught up to sort of what I think most of us really love most about the Marvel voice is that range of tones that's in the comics and also in the movies. And
humor is a huge tool, I think, for us to make these otherworldly characters, these superpowered characters, as relatable as possible. And it hadn't occurred to me how much death followed you around, frankly. But there's also a great sense of humor behind that, and many of the gags and the great humor in this movie came out of early meetings that we had with the death dealer here.
With the Grim Reaper. But the humor is something it comes from all sources, because some of the moments were scripted and developed by us in the room, and some came from suggestions from storyboard artists. One of my favorite, funniest moments in the movie, it's a very small moment, but Chris Hemsworth came onto our set, and he's at his girlfriend's apartment for the first time and doesn't know what to do with Mjolnir, and the way he solved that was just his idea in the moment, and we grabbed it because we knew it was sort of exactly the tone of humor that the movie needs.
I'm just going to give one cue. I mean, there's another great comedic moment with the subway system in London, but that's something that you have to check out for yourself. Another fantastic thing, talking about comedic elements, I think, we've seen so many great movies with Natalie Portman. Leon, The Professional, Heat, Garden State, Black Swan, but I think in this one, she is really funny. I mean, the moments that she has with Chris. Where did you want her to be standing in the relationship between, Loki and Thor, who have done 2 movies together, and she sort of was left out, and now she's back in the whole team up again?
Well, we wanted to continue. Excuse me. We wanted to continue that romance, of course, and Jane Foster is sort of the earthbound anchor for the film, and she's an astrophysicist, so a lot of her science is what helps us explain the cosmic realm of Asgard and things like that. So it's very, very important to the movie. It was important to her, I think, in early discussions that she not just stand around and talk about science. She wanted to have more playful elements over the course of the movie.
That was funny, because I was, afraid of meeting her because she's a movie star and she won an Academy Award. I remember the first meeting we had with her, I wanted to reassure her that it was going to be a serious movie, with lots of serious moments. She's coming off Black Swan, and to my surprise, all she wanted to know was that she was going to be funny in the movie too, that she had a chance to be funny. Because in the first film there was a lot of humor, but she felt that she sometimes was outside the joke, and in this one, it was a great relief to hear that she wanted to be part of the humor, and she is.
And we have another clip basically showing the first meeting of Thor and Jane after what had happened in New York. Enjoy. Kevin, earlier on I spoke about, that you are in charge of creating this amazing universe that Marvel has done in the past with comic books and the stories that they tell. So where are you heading at the moment, especially connecting all these different storylines, Avengers Assemble, then the Guardians of the Galaxy? I mean, there's so many things that are happening at the same time. What can we expect?
Well, we look at these, this as a saga of a cinematic universe that we're building, and we consider Iron Man 1 through to the first Avengers film, Avengers Assemble, as phase 1, and that now we're in phase 2, meaning the films between Avengers films, and earlier this summer we had Iron Man 3, which we were very pleased with the response it got, that film and much of the Phase 2 films were designed to go, okay, if you love them together, remember they're just as interesting by themselves, and obviously with the upcoming release of The Dark Kingdom, doing the same thing for Thor. Next year we have the return of the first Avenger, the next Captain America film, which is very, very different. He's in the contemporary world now, a modern world, wholly different genre than the first Captain America film. And in a lot of ways, it is what is going to link Avengers and Avengers 2. So we sort of call it Avengers 1.5. He's working with S.H.I.E.L.D., Black Widow, Nick Fury. The events of that film will carry directly into the beginning of the next Avengers film. And as you mentioned, Guardians of the Galaxy, which is a completely different movie for Marvel, all new characters with a unique set of actors that we're very excited about to expand our universe beyond simply the Avengers characters. Then Avengers Age of Ultron, and Edgar Wright is bringing, finally, after almost 10 years, Ant-Man to the screen in 2015 after Avengers Age of Ultron.
Wow. So there are a lot of stories to tackle, a lot of things to do. Talking about the size of the Marvel Universe, getting back to the size of a movie such as Thor: The Dark Kingdom, Alan, you are someone who's more in favor of creating worlds on location than instead of, in front of a green screen. So what did you do? What did you do, and where did you go to be able to create that world?
Yeah, we talked about this early on. I was hoping to make Asgard and all of the realms we were seeing for the first time feel relatable and real. So to me, that means putting real things in front of the camera for the actors to interact with. It affects you at every level, the performance, but also the way you use the camera. So for Asgard, for example, we shot plates in Norway to create the topography to build our imaginary city on top. For Svartalheim, which is the land of, well, it's the Dark Kingdom, the land of the Dark Elves, we went to Iceland to use the fantastical landscapes you can get there with black volcanic sand and so on. London, our Earth story takes place in London, so we let London just be the character, and we shot on real locations there, which I think helps. And when it came to Asgard, the scenes we staged in Asgard, we built some of the biggest sets that I think Marvel had ever built, and we built them sort of the old-fashioned way with a great designer who uses plaster and metal and wood, so that you could really feel them. Was the idea.
And it looks awesome.
I think it comes across. I think it helps, and then you
mind-blowing.
sort of CGI and visual effects become part of it, but you have a base there. Kind of.
You got to check it out. It's really, really cool. I think now it's time for questions from the floor. Is there anyone who would like to ask our two guests a question? The lady right here in the first row.
Hi. First of all, I would like to thank Marvel for outing Loki as a bisexual character. Very much. Thank you very much. Great done. And secondly, I would like to ask, we talked about Loki a lot, and what about a standalone movie for Loki? Is there any plans in the future?
Well, we're going to finish this press tour and go back and talk about it, because everywhere we go, people ask us that question.
Same question.
And the first thing we think is, well, they must be asking because they like what we've done with the character so far. So that is our first takeaway. And as Tom Hiddleston has said to that very question, Thor is defined by Loki. Loki is defined by Thor. In the comics, it is their mutual storylines that provide the backbone for most of the stories. But we love that people have embraced the character so much, and we're going to have to talk about it.
Thanks. Any more questions? The lady back there with the glasses, just stand up. Exactly. No, yeah, that lady.
Thank you for the chance. Glad to see you, Kevin. Actually, I was in London's Apple store, but there was too many Tom's fans. I haven't get the chance. And first question, do a little journalist that in London, there was even a question asked for our director Alan, but no one asked you this any question. Do you have any journalists for our actor for this?
Is the question for Kevin?
Yes, I want to ask Kevin that in London there was many questions asked for Tom, and
Yes.
even a question asked for our
Yes.
director Alan, but no one asked for you.
Nobody wants to talk to the producer. It's much more exciting to talk to the actor.
And I think the great success.
I'll be over here. It's okay.
Sorry, and I think the great success of Marvel movie, that's because your name on it. And actually, my question was being answered in London by a. I've heard that your contract is already covered phase 3. Congratulations, and I think. We can't, without you, to the Marvel can't without you to bring us.
Very nice. Thank you very, very much. That is very sweet.
And I have.
Do you have a question, though?
Yes. And may I ask you a personal question? That I've seen your the producer list that you all the movie you produce is about Marvel, and who is your personal favorite superhero?
There's a question.
There it is. Well, thank you very much. Come on. Yes. My name is on these movies. There are a lot of names on these movies. Our co-president, Ludi Esposito, is in the audience here. He is equally responsible for these movies. My favorite character, I find it very hard to pick a favorite when I can be a part of so many of them. But the truth is, I love what Thor has done for the cinematic universe, and that we can open it up to other worlds, which allowed the finale of the Avengers, which allows us to get into the Guardians of the Galaxy. And I also love Iron Man very much because he was the first one. Without Iron Man, which was the first film that we produced ourselves at Marvel, we put all of our taste, all of our instincts into that film, and the fact that the audience responded so well is what has led to where we are today in the cinematic universe. So I would say to those two. And thank you very much for everything you've said.
Any more compliments or questions? Let's have gentleman, yeah, with the cap. Yeah, right there. Sorry to make you run back and forth. You're gonna look like Thor after.
Thor never runs.
Thank you for the chance. Actually, I got a question for Kevin. It's more like into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So, like, Marvel has already released the Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. TV series, and I've heard that there will be like 4 more TV series for Marvel, and one of them is like Agent Peggy Carter, the one from Captain America. Maybe you could give us like a little bit hints for more.
There have been some rumors lately of additional shows. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is of course on the air now. The success of that show, I'm sure, has led Jeff Loeb and the people that run our television division to figure out what is next. Ludi Esposito directed a wonderful short that you can all see on the Iron Man 3 Blu-ray about Agent Carter. So certainly there's potential there. And among the 8,000 Marvel characters, there's lots of characters that are probably better suited for television and the ongoing storylines that allows. What those are, I'm not sure yet, but I'm sure there will be announcements in the not-too-distant future, but not today.
Alan, we've been continuously talking about Thor and Loki, but there's another great character, or Jane, but there's another great character in this one, Malekith, portrayed by Christopher Eccleston. And the way that he looks amazing. I mean, the makeup and the design of the costume is just mind-blowing. And then the language. What did you do in creating him? Because now you've had so many different villains in the Marvel Universe. What was important, you know, in his look and the way that he would appear on
obviously
screen?
Who the villain is a hugely defining thing of any of these movies. And in our case, we had Loki, who was playing a kind of complex quasi-villain role, but he wasn't going to be the main villain. You guys had already decided. And so Chris Eccleston came on to play Malekith and to sort of provide the bigger threat and the darkness that everything else kind of plays against. Part of the fun and part of the challenge of inventing a new villain, or not inventing, but carrying him onto the screen for the first time, is you have to invent their look. And you can sometimes go to the comics for a lot of inspiration, but there are times when you need to step away from the comics. And if you go to look at the comics, you'll see Malekith is very different than the way he appears on our screen. He wears sort of a multicolored coat. He's got wild hair. We were true to some elements in the design. He has a very famous two-toned face, and we kind of give an origin myth for that look. But it was a lot of work with a lot of people involved. Charlie Wen is one of the designers of a lot of the imagery for Marvel. David White is the guy that did the prosthetics that make it possible, for him to have that face, but also not lose the actor or lose the performance. Yeah, I'm really proud of that imagery. You can see him a little bit
on the back.
On the poster. Where's he hiding?
Yeah.
He's looming on the upper left.
Important.
But yes, if you come see the film, I think he's both unnerving and beautiful at the same time.
Kevin, that would be a question to you. 20 years ago, the bad guy would be bad. He would be the prime evil person. But I think that the villain over the years has changed, especially in the Marvel Universe. If you look at, for example, Iron Man 3, Ben Kingsley's portrayal of the Mandarin was, but it was, I think, brilliant. And this time in Thor, Malekith is not just evil, but he has sort of, you understand why he is that way. Is that something that you want to create? I mean, Loki as well is the evil guy in Avengers.
I think the best villains have always had that attribute. I think in the comic books, the best villains, Magneto in the X-Men, is one of the best villains from the comics and in those early movies, because you understood where he was coming from. You understood his end game. You just didn't agree with how he was going about it. I hope you didn't agree with it. And same thing with Loki, and that again is one of the reasons why we built 2 movies around Loki before anyone who wasn't a comic fan knew who the heck Loki was. It's because we believed in those textures. In the same way, the conversations with Malekith were as much about his nobility and his lost dark kingdom and what his people and what he believed he had sacrificed to just give a shred of hope that his people could survive. And when you relate to a bad guy, it's more than just them twirling their mustache like they used to do in the old days.
That's true. Questions? Compliments? In the back, the gentleman.
Hey, my question is to Kevin, that why did you decide to leave out the poor Spider-Man from the Avenger movies?
Well, I'm not sure I'd call him poor Spider-Man. I think Spidey is doing just well. He is contracted to appear in films produced by the Sony studio. They've done an amazing job on all of the Spider-Man films, and I think will continue to do so for years to come. And also, he never played a big part in the Avengers. Sometimes, if they wanted to sell comic books, they would put Spidey in there for a few issues. But he was never really at the core of who the Avengers were. Who knows what will happen in the future of the cinematic universe, but right now, Spidey's doing fine where he is, and I think the Avengers are doing fine where they are.
Mm-hmm. The lady right here in the third row on the right-hand side. Microphone is coming that way.
Thank you. I have a question to actually both of you. In Kenneth Branagh's Thor, we see Asgard as very shiny and golden, and everything is perfect and light and everything's shiny. And I guess in some of the trailers, we see actually Loki as he's led into the throne room. And that has completely changed. Like, it's not a lot darker, and there are a lot of darker colors. It's not as golden anymore. So I would like to know, to what extent did you keep like Kenneth Branagh's vision of Asgard and how it was meant to look like, and to what extent did it change now that another director has done it?
Well, I think you'll see in the film that the exterior of the palace is very similar. Much of the topography is very similar. The Bifrost Bridge and Heimdall's Observatory, which has been rebuilt from the end of the first film, is very, very similar. And in the first film, it was a very unique thing. It was establishing this sort of science fiction, sort of fantasy, entirely Marvel version of these Norse gods as drawn by Jack Kirby in the comics, which are very gold and very angular. And because that had never been brought to the screen before, we really wanted to differentiate it from Lord of the Rings or from things that audiences were more used to. Now that audiences understand what Asgard is, that Thor is a known character, we thought we had the leeway to go deeper, to go to the street levels, as we said, to see more of the underside of Asgard. The other thing I say is we see Asgard for the first time in the original Thor as it was prepped for a coronation before the Frost Giant attack, and they buffed the place up and made it very shiny for the coronation.
Yes, and by the time I came along, they'd buffed it down. There's a lot of respect for that approach, and it's really in keeping with this specific take on Asgard, which is in the comics that that these are not literally gods; they are a superior race with superior technologies that we mistook for gods in the past, which I think is a great way of setting them in the Marvel universe. I was always drawn to imagery that had a sense of the scale and the weight that you get from the Norse mythology and the Celtic mythology. So I was really grateful to have an excuse to bring that in. So buffing it down was that excuse. The palace and the exterior are still the same, but we get to go to sort of backstage at Asgard a little bit more this time. Still the same world, but just it's gotten a little more lived in.
I'm afraid we only have time for one, maybe two more questions. The lady right there with the glasses, and then let's see what happens.
First of all, thank you for coming to Berlin. I hope you enjoy your stay here. And I have a question to both of you. If you had to choose, where would you rather live? On Asgard or here on Midgard?
That's a good question.
Wow, that's the question Jane has to ask herself all the time. Cheapers.
I would like to visit Asgard and then sort of decide.
No, you have to commit.
Asgard.
Can I bring my family, my kids with me wherever I go? Oh, you're not
She's
sure?
not sure.
She's not sure. That would pretty much be a deal breaker. If I could take the kids to Asgard, I think I bet they've got great education there. probably a pretty low crime rate.
Health system is
Health system,
spectacular.
universal health care,
Yes.
which my
Amazing.
country is looking for. So Asgard with the kids.
Final question. There was a lady over there with the striped shirt and glasses.
Hello. Yeah, since this is a sequel to pretty much 2 movies, I was wondering how difficult it was to strike a balance between, inside jokes and cross-references to the other movies, and at the same time still make it appealing to viewers who have maybe never seen a Marvel or Avengers movie before.
That is the key to all of our films. It always has to work as a film first. And you hire a director like Alan Taylor, who thinks the connections are fun and neat and everything, but cares about his film. and that's what we want, is to focus first and foremost on the film as a film. Everything else is icing on top of the cake, and to make it fun. And I think post-Avengers, we can have references to New York. We can have references, as Loki makes, to Thor's new friends and other friends. And that's just enough for the audience who know it really well, and wear Loki shirts to Apple Store Q&As that really understand it, and people who may or may not have even seen the other movies, but sort of know they exist.
Or who wear Game of Thrones t-shirts to Apple stores. Yeah,
Oh, nice.
But yeah, that is the challenge, as you were saying, you screen it for little audiences about this size to see what people are thinking of it as you're finishing it, and you ask them, who has seen the Avengers, who has seen Thor 1, and you said something very interesting, which was that for those who have seen Thor 1 and Avengers, you also ask them, do you think it was necessary to see those films to understand this one? And the ones who've seen both say, yes, it's necessary, you have to see these movies. And the ones who haven't seen them say, no, it's not necessary, you don't have to see those movies. But that's the spectrum of people you're trying to reach, is that wide.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for coming here, asking all these interesting questions. Thank you very much for the compliments. Please do check out Thor: The Dark Kingdom, opening up on the 31st of October. Tomorrow is a huge premiere. Please join us. It's going to be great. And thank you so much, Alan Taylor and Kevin Feige.
Thanks very much.
All the very best.
Thank you.
We're looking forward to all the movies coming out.